Hello and welcome back to Podcast with a K. I'm your host Carla with a K, and I am joined here on this fine whatever evening you're listening to by the one, the only DK Lyons, who you just heard a song from called Stop. So DK Lyons, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, if you're listening to us, you're either listening on WECS 90.1 FM, Twitch, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We're on all platforms. We are also on all social media at Podcast with a K, except for Twitter, where it's Podcast XK, because that's funny, I think, anyway. Hi. So, you know what? We always do a bunch of preamble, and then we're rushing to get in everything we want to say by the end of it. So I think today we jump right into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself as a person, as a songwriter, about this new song specifically. What is the first impression you want to make on our dear listeners?
Oh my God. So my name is DK Lyons and I'm from Massachusetts originally, but I'm based in Manhattan. And I've been making music since I was 5 years old. It was one of those things that it was, I got the itch kind of growing up on classic rock music, decided that I wanted to follow in the footsteps of, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and the Who and the Rolling Stones and become a rock star. And I think that dream has changed over time, but it's still kind of that core dream of mine. So
Internally, you're still a rock star.
exactly. And honestly, I get to live that life a little bit here in New York City. I've got an amazing band that I play with. And we do shows at all these kind of like iconic New York venues. And this EP that's coming out is actually kind of the first project that we all got to work on together. I've made 2 albums and 2 EPs previously with a producer mentor of mine, actually based in Stamford, Connecticut. So shout out Connecticut.
Shout out Connecticut.
But this time around, I really wanted to kind of handle most of the production myself, and that's been a really interesting, long, hard, but rewarding journey. And as part of that, I got to work with my actual band to record their voices as the backup vocals and help with arrangements. And it's been really fun to bring those songs to life on stage as well. So I would say for those who haven't heard my music, it's kind of all rooted in pop rock, but I like to say like I'm a magpie, so I like shiny objects.
I love that.
So there's influence of like UK garage dance music in there, and there's influence of lo-fi, and there's the song you just heard, Stop, is like rooted in pop rock, or pop punk, like early 2000s, like The Maine and Mayday Parade, and obviously Blink-182 and that kind of stuff. So there's kind of influence from everywhere, but I think at my core, I've kind of spent since I was 5 years old kind of honing my lyrical approach, and now I kind of hear and perceive melody, and that's what kind of all comes together and makes like a DK song, if you will.
That's awesome. Okay, you touched on, I think, everything that I want to ask about. There's always like a series of questions that I always ask artists just because that's what I want to know personally, selfishly. And I have therefore influenced the audience to care about these specific things. And we'll get to all of them. The first thing that I wanted to ask about was you've taken us just in this little introduction through a journey of how your music has progressed from classic rock to indie rock to pop punk even. And that I think is the most interesting thing, because whenever I first was introduced to the concept of this interview, Erica was like, I think Erica of course, Joya Communications, who we love here, was like, I think you'll really like this artist. He kind of seems to be your vibe. And I was like, okay, that's awesome, sure. And, I read the thing and it said, I read the first paragraph, I'll admit. And I said, oh, indie rock, cool. I was thinking Bastille, Arizona, The Strike, The Midnight, somewhere in that like world. And I listened to Stop, and I'm like, my little emo heart. um, but I think what's really interesting is that you begin with your musical journey in classic rock, which is a little bit grungy, a little bit glam, very cool. It's, appeals to both the pop and the rock audiences. It's the great equalizer. Your music video for Stop, however, draws inspiration from somewhere else. So I will let you speak about this, because I read this and I'm like, I can't believe it until I hear it from the horse's mouth.
So to give full context, video is like another passion of mine. Like came up making ski movies in college and got my first job in video production as a result of that. And since the beginning, I've always made music videos for pretty much every song I make because I just love the art of music videos. And I think it's a little bit kind of like fighting back at the TikToks of the world where everything is just so like
Yes.
authentic, hackable, whatever. And I'm like, I'm gonna create eras and lore and all this, the other buzzwords that you hear in music.
Hmm.
But I really think that music videos are such an amazing way to expand the story and create the visual accompaniment to things. And there's so many artists out there that are still making amazing music videos. And when I came into this kind of new EP, I wanted to do something different. So instead of just coming up with unique ideas for each song, I was like, well, 2024 was arguably the greatest year for women in pop music history. Like, what if I
The
tried to line
girls
up
are back.
literally and like it's such an incredible year across the board from every genre. And I was like, I wonder if I could line up a song on each song on my EP to one of like these iconic artists and their videos, and it came together very seamlessly. And I was so excited to kind of go down that path and explore it. So the first video for Love Seeking, we did kind of a not a shot for shot remake, but very much inspired by Chappell Roan's Red Wine Supernova because of the obvious magic references. That video is so amazing. My friend Emily, who's another singer songwriter in New York City, was just like the perfect fit to play the magician. So
Which is
that went,
amazing.
yeah, no, I mean, we had so much fun with it. And then I kind of knew that I wanted the video for Stop to match up with Sabrina Carpenter because I love Sabrina Carpenter. I think she's so unique. I think she's so witty and clever, and she's very, charged with certain,
She has
certain
a very
hormones.
bold energy.
Whatever we can say on the show. And I think Stop as a song kind of matches up to that. But what I also love about Sabrina is she has these layers of depth to her that like she always has something to say, and there's always like this subtle like metaphor or philosophical thing she's saying in her song. And I think that lined up well with Stop as a concept. And so yeah, I was watching her videos, and the video for Espresso kind of just really struck me as we could make something like this,
Yeah.
just my style. And so, we went to Coney Island with pretty basic camera setup and my friends, and a loose concept, and we made the video for Stop that took a lot of inspo from the Espresso video, and it's still got that pop punk edge to it, but I think it's got that
Yeah.
tongue in kind of Sabrina Carpenter staple too.
It was definitely one of the most fun times I've had watching a music video recently because nothing was what I expected it to be. And,
Mm.
I'm also comparing it to the write up that I was, trying to orchestrate this interview even around in the first place, which I know we usually don't talk about the interview as an interview on the show because it's like a little too meta. But I think specifically in this case, I need y'all to understand my thought process because, like I said, this hit a lot of notes for me and I was like, that's crazy. So, I go into this not expecting pop punk. So that's like thing number one that I'm like, all right, I'm hooked, all right? And then I keep reading and it says, this is drawing inspiration from Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I could see, pop punk usually goes for shock value. Sabrina Carpenter definitely goes for shock value, although, on a different side of a different coin, I think. But specifically what caught my attention is that Stop is meant to be representative of gluttony as one of the deadly sins, which also is an interest which we've talked about, like the deadly sins and mythology and how everything kind of mirrors each other and why that's crazy. So specifically in this write-up, I was reading that and I was like, you know what, that is kind of interesting because Sabrina Carpenter's entire persona, not maybe her lyrics, if you listen, like you're right, there is depth and there's kind of like more meanings about like what you want out of life and the world. But Sabrina Carpenter's entire persona is I want the world and I'm gonna have it, right? Which I thought was really cool. And I wanted to ask if that was also a conscious decision of why you chose Sabrina's video as the inspiration.
Yeah, no, 100%, you nailed it. Like it wasn't like fully mastermind intentional, but as I started to kind of put the pieces together, they started to fall into place
Mm-hmm.
for that exact thing. And I think, the coloring of her video is very like oversaturated and like deep and like rich, and
Yeah.
it extracts every ounce of life out of the shoot. And I think you nailed it. Like that's kind of what she wants, is she wants
Yeah.
the whole world to see her stage design and just like how everything with her is very just like big and attention grabbing because she earned that attention. And I think all those things just really clicked for me with matching up Stop to her video. And I think the idea of gluttony in the song, as it kind of originally started, is more like gluttony of words, because the whole theme of the song is like, dude, just shut up and enjoy life. Like you're
Yeah.
overthinking everything. You're pouring all these words into your mind at one time, and it's this big soup of just a mess. And this is an opportunity through this encounter with this hero character in the song to kind of move on from that gluttony and realize that like life can be boiled down to like very basic, simple things that just evoke joy. Um, and so that's kind of where the Deadly Sin tie-in comes in there.
Yeah, which I think is awesome. I'm always a fan. The film studies minor in me was having a great time breaking it down.
Cool.
And I think that's awesome as well that there's such a distinct kind of pop punk sort of message to it in which it's like shut up and just live. Um, I feel like pop punk is very much so more direct rather than meant to be catchy. And I always love a good situation like this in which you kind of see the crossover between genres. I think one of the more shocking ones, you mentioned TikTok, and I've been seeing this on TikTok. I Prevail, which is like a heavier rock band, does a lot of Taylor Swift covers. And they got asked one time, and they're like, we genuinely do just like Taylor Swift music. And so I personally love that crossover. And so, you have your visual inspirations from the girlies of pop right now. And you have, of course, the musical inspiration of your rock influences. Which do you say more heavily influences your actual songwriting, right? Because you have your visual and your sound, which are kind of aesthetic choices and an atmospheric choice, but which one actually speaks to your soul? If you write from the soul, maybe you just write to hit some bars, but,
No,
what's
no,
the
no.
answer?
It's a great question. No, it all comes from the soul. And the way that I've kind of thought about it recently, because I've been writing songs since I was 5 years old. It started with writing down song titles and sitting there with like a tennis racket and just like singing out the melody over and over again. And
Hmm.
it's been one of those things that like I've tried to run away from but can't. Like I'm always just kind of like a radio antenna for melody and ideas. But I think why I was drawn to pop punk specifically so much and rock music as a kid is that catharsis, right? Like there's this catharsis that comes from expressing yourself that way. And I went through, some trauma as a kid, losing my dad and some other family members and needing an outlet for that. And that's where it always kind of came from. And I think with time, it's remained that emotional outlet, but I've written enough songs now that I don't just have to be like, I'm sad and here's why. It's more
Right.
like, okay, that's the core of the idea of what I'm feeling, but I'm going to now approach it just a bit more artistically and come up with, different stories and things that I just find more interesting now because I found that kind of approach to music interesting when I was younger, and I still do. I still relate to that music, but for now where I'm at in my life, I think I like the added layers to it. So from a writing perspective, there's so many great songwriters out there doing it. And I think recently, like, Jason Isbell is kind of been a big influence. He's more of like an alt country songwriter type.
Hmm.
Phoebe Bridgers is one of my
Oh,
favorite writers.
yes.
I love the record that she did with Lucy and what's the other person's name in that band. I can't remember right now, but there's just so many good songwriters out there that I've taken influence from, and then also too dating back to kind of writers throughout each generation that I'm drawn to the sound of the music, like a Tom Petty or a Prince or a Third Eye Blind, but I'm also drawn to like what do they have to say and how are they saying
Yeah.
it.
And even as
So
a lineup, those three are completely different artists, which is a testament to what
exactly,
you're saying.
yeah. I just like I like what I like, and I'm not really one that is going to sit there and like not listen to something because I'm like that doesn't fit into the main genre that I like listening to.
Yeah.
Like I'll sit there and listen to Taylor Swift, and then I'll turn around and listen to a rapper like St. John, or then go listen to like a Brian Eno like ambient album or whatever it might
Right.
be. Like, yeah, it's just I jump all over the place, and I think my music kind of is a result of that.
That's kind of perfect. And it, again, just kind of solidifies that this is the perfect sort of interview for the podcast. I was saying, I think, not last week, maybe one of the previous weeks on the show, that if you were to make a playlist of all of the songs that have been featured on this here show, you would have something like you would have Taylor Swift, followed by Tyler the Creator, followed by the theme song for Interstellar. Like, there is no rhyme or reason. We just kind of, whatever's interesting that week, that's what's on the show, and that's what we talk about, and that's the whole point.
I love it so
Yeah.
much.
Which, it's cool to see that happen because I feel like, especially now, especially with TikTok, a lot of artists kind of pigeonhole themselves because what all of the big pro accounts and all the like tips and tricks, how to be a successful this, and that tell you, find something that works and keep doing that. And I've always kind of really refused to accept that. I also work in we were talking about like day jobs earlier. I work as well in social media marketing, and so a lot of my job is finding trends and what's going to perform well for a brand versus a nonprofit versus a summer camp type of situation. And all of them want the same thing. They all want me to use that same trending audio, whether it's a clip from a Taylor Swift song that is happens to be a minute long and loops perfectly because that's what's going to work for a songwriter. Or maybe not Taylor Swift. I think Taylor Swift does songwriting a lot different, but um, people will find a way to clip and speed up something from a song that loops for exactly a minute. Or you'll have, for example, the meme of the kid on the boat doing the weird dance, the Thailand boat kid aura farming, or whatever the trend is actually called. Um, but you see
Yep.
that bleed into people's writing styles, especially in music and music videos where everything is meant to be a clip or a dance challenge or come with some sort of like caption call and response type of trend. And I think you lose a lot of like the real meaning behind songs. I've talked to different songwriters here on the show and then in just my real day-to-day life, and the consensus seems to be like, oh, well, I want to do this, but like this will probably perform better. And then it's like a coin toss as to what actually gets published based on whether or not their original idea is better than what's currently trending, but only because the original idea had more trending potential. Like, it all
Mm.
kind of comes down to that right now, and it kind of sucks, but it's cool to see people succeed. I'm still just, I find myself being like, am I just old school? Do I just like miss the days when anyone could upload anything on YouTube and that was what was trending that day just because it was different? Now everything I feel like feels like a lot of the same. And so whenever you're writing something new, do you take into consideration whether or not your work can trend? Is that at all something you factor in?
I first and foremost, I think it's amazing that you kind of have that mindset because I think it's needed and refreshing. I think like TikTok has served its purpose, and I think it does has served as an amazing entertainment platform for so many people and launched so many careers of artists that definitely deserve it. But when I think about like how art makes me feel, I've never found anything on TikTok or social media that's made me feel that way. Like it's a
Yeah,
movie, it's an album, it's a particular episode of a TV show that like no, I'm not saying you also have to like bleed for your art, but like there's inherently, I feel like something that's just a little bit different about those mediums, and maybe what I'm looking to get out of it versus someone else. And so I think to answer your other question, that's how I approach songwriting. Like, yeah, I could sit here and go pull up the New Music Friday or the trending and probably create something pretty mediocre, but pretty quickly that matches it. But no, I usually go down the path of if I hear a song that like I'm moved by, whether it's got 10 million streams or 10,000 streams, I'll go down the path of making it, and it'll probably take me 8 to 12 months to put it out because I really want to spend time working on the craft and
yeah,
sure that like I'm happy with it because I'm very nitpicky of a lot of things, and I'll redo vocals 3 times if I feel like it's not the right fit. And even when it's done, I'll still be overanalyzing it. So I think for me personally, like I don't know that I'll ever line up with the trend just because it's not how I operate as an artist. And I think ultimately, like I may make it, I may not make it as an artist, but I will have to live with the art I've made forever. And I like want to make sure that I enjoy and feel moved by that art no matter what, if anyone else does or not. You know what I mean?
for
So
sure.
um it's probably like a pessimistic way to look at it, but it's kind of just like for
Yeah.
me, like in my like what I feel to my core is how I operate. So
I don't think it sounds pessimistic at all. It's more it seems realistically hopeful, right? Like you're not saying like, oh, I'm about to put out like the next, big newsworthy trend and TikTok dance challenge. You're saying I'm making something that matters to me and I hope it resonates with someone else. And I think that's a better way to look at it, because the more people that resonate with something, the better that it'll perform, right? For example, and it's not like that has to mean you have a cult following or like in a specific niche, because right now I've seen a lot of people saying, bring back recession pop, bring back Kesha, bring back this, bring back that. And Kesha's touring again, so clearly that mentality works, right? Like that was an era of music where a lot of music sounded similar, and a lot of music actually was similar because it was all being produced by Benny Blanco at 120 beats per minute, which is one of my favorite things that's ever come out of any interview ever.
I love that fact so much.
For anyone that doesn't know, Benny Blanco is a producer, super famous. He's done probably every single one of your favorite songs from 2016 and previously. And the reason that every song kind of sounds similar and has the same kind of upbeat vibe is because he didn't know how to change the setting from songs to be at 120 beats per minute, which is amazing. But
But see, to me, that's a great example of someone just like feeling the music and like making whatever he wanted to without feeling like the burden of knowledge of like he's not an expert at
mhm.
production. Obviously, we didn't know you could change the beat. Or the pressure of like trying to make stuff fit a certain speed for TikTok or whatever it might be. Like he was like, oh, this sounds great, I'm gonna go down this path because it sounds great.
Yeah.
And I think that it's an amazing story of like, yeah, you don't have to have X, Y, and Z to be successful either. You could literally not know that you could
You could
change the
literally
beat.
use the default settings on everything and still produce radio hit after radio hit, which is, it goes to show like exactly what you just said, as well as the fact that like sometimes people just want something new, right? Like, and something new doesn't have to mean something different. It just has to be something fresh. Maybe it's a new voice, maybe it's a new lyrical pattern, maybe it's like all of the technical aspects of music, fine. But what people remember at the end is like, oh, those were the days, those were so fun, right? I was so happy, I was so this. It's like the feeling that you get from that art, right? Like there's not a lot that you could probably take away from Blow by Kesha, but it's still the type of song that's never going to leave your summer playlist.
Right, exactly. Oh, I love that. And I think every artist has like they serve a different purpose like in your life. You do need those artists where it's your getting ready to go out on a Friday night type vibe, and then you need those artists that's like your Sunday solo introspective kind of vibe too. And I think what you made me just think of is like one of my favorite artists is Charlie XCX. She's definitely getting a music video from me at some point. But like her career is really fascinating to me, where she kind of started in like the rave scene when she was 16 and was just like, I'm gonna make like alternative pop rave music. And she has, I think, like 7 or 8 albums that came out before Brat kind of took over the world and became this big thing. But she's been effectively doing that, but also really experimenting for a long time. Like she has one of her early albums is like kind of a pop punk infused album, and then she's got some like crazy future beat type stuff, and then she made a kind of pop album with Crash. And like she's been an artist that's always kind of just followed her own instinct. And I think it'll be interesting to see what she does next now that she's off her major label deal as well, because I think she'll probably put out even more interesting music going forward, and people will probably eat it up now because they know
Now
her.
she has the following. It's what everyone's been saying, right? It takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
But that's actually a phenomenal example, because Charlie XCX kind of fits that exact like era of like pre 2016 music. I think, she had, I think I Love It is her biggest song,
Yep.
with Icona Pop. And then, whenever I think of Charlie XCX, I'll think of that. Or was she on Fancy, or am I wrong?
She was on Fancy, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like, either features or things that were on the radio, but I never thought about them as hers, right? It was always someone
Right.
and her. And now that Brad is everywhere, I'm like, oh, that she's back. And then, you're kind of dealing with kids that didn't grow up in that era, right? I'm dating myself. I graduated high school in 2015, so by then Charlie XCX was, oh, I used to listen to her in high school, right? And now on this side of things, I'm like, oh, that's cool, a little kind of repeat. We're going again. Let's run it back. And then, there's TikTok kids saying, I just found Charlie XCX, and it's like, y'all weren't around for it. That's crazy.
I know. I mean, one other artist that like I'm fascinated by what they've been up to lately is All American Rejects, who've
Oh
had
yeah.
a renaissance. And what I love about what they're doing is they're like, yeah, we like kind of took a step back because we got too big and we felt like, we were being commercialized, and now we just like want to play and have the same feeling we had when we were playing club shows when we were 18 years old. So they've been playing like backyard barbecues and like frat parties, and but then also just played in front of like at Fenway Park for a sold out crowd for the Savannah Bananas. And it's like,
Yeah.
who thought in 2025 that the All American Rejects, who haven't been relevant since 2008 maybe,
Right.
would be having this like big cultural renaissance. And like I love it so much for that.
It's amazing. And I think it's a really good time to kind of do the type of thing that you're doing, in which you're kind of paying your respects to the artists that inspire you, because that's what every single major artist is doing too. All American Rejects is an amazing example of this. Before they started doing this, which was, I thought, the coolest part of it, they genuinely did it because they wanted to do small shows again. Boys Like Girls had also done a small venue tour. Bastille had done a small venue tour. Like a lot of artists that I like used to follow kind of came back on my radar because they did that. I'm like, that's cool. Some artists just did that and left it there. All American Rejects took it to the next level with the Savannah Bananas, and I was like, I really wonder if that following is gonna show up for them, because it's one thing to be like, oh, I'm gonna go catch them for free at my neighbor's backyard, to actually go and pay big stadium money for a big stadium show. I think the last time that I'd even heard of them, they played that ex Viner David Dobrik's birthday party like some years ago. And before that, you're right. Similarly, I hadn't heard of them since I was like younger, other
Right.
than like, a surprise spot in like an emo night appearance here and there,
Right.
like in New York or LA, which is kind of awesome, just because I feel like people kind of miss the connection to small venues, not just because they're huge artists like All American Rejects, but because I think everything is so commercialized towards having like a fandom and an audience, digitally as well as in person, right? There's not that separation anymore. I feel like you used to see a lot of artists that actually use their Twitter to say what they were thinking. They use their Instagram lives to just talk to people like while they were doing their makeup. And now all of that is a part of their, social media marketing write up. Like there's not exactly a place to just kind of be. And so you see
Yep.
a lot of this now, which I think is really cool and really fun, especially as someone that doesn't like to pay a lot of money for stuff, because Ticketmaster be stealing half of that. Um,
Yep.
and I do like to support the artists that I like. And so it's like, well, I can't afford to go to these concerts at $600. And so, if I can catch someone at a small venue, I'm there. And while I'm there, I'm like, yeah, like, you know what? They did this. Let me support. I'll buy merch too. And it just
Yep.
kind of snowballs, because now they're back on my Spotify. They're getting that, the 0.005 cents off of every stream. But like, it adds up across a worldwide kind of audience. So I feel like, you're kind of following suit, but in your own way, because I haven't ever seen anyone do this, where it's like your own completely original song, but with a music video inspired by something like the other song you mentioned, Love Seeking.
Yep.
I As soon as I started watching it, I'm like, wait, this looks so familiar. And right now you're saying, oh, that's Chapel Roan. And I'm like, of course it's Chapel Roan. That's perfect. It's shot for shot. It's amazing. But it does also kind of serve for recognition, right? Because we as people look for patterns in anything, and I think that's kind of also a cool thing in what you're doing, in which you're solidifying your name alongside the artists that inspire you, so no one can first of all ever say, oh, he stole that idea. It's like, no, I did that on purpose. That was a fun choice that I made. But
Right.
also you're giving them something new to listen to, attached to the feeling of, oh, I already like this. Here's something cool.
100%. No, I think you just covered so much ground of kind of how I feel as an artist.
Yeah.
I think, um, I think you're totally right about the smaller venue thing. First and foremost, I think like artists are probably missing that connection, because when you do start out, like there's no better feeling than being on a stage and like only having like 15 of your best friends in the room, all like singing the words because they've heard you rehearsing it for two
Yeah.
years or whatever it is. And it starts with that very intimate connection. And I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of explore the idea of like the seven deadly sins and Dante's, Inferno specifically, is because it was kind of written at a time where like this one big conglomerate that, was organized religion was kind of like taking over the world and dimming everything down and kind of making it like the lowest common denominator to control people. And I was really feeling like disenfranchised looking at our modern day society where like it feels like capitalism has kind of done that same thing where everything is geared towards selling you like on products. Every single thing you look at on social media, everywhere you go is an opportunity that brands are taking, and there's fewer and fewer brands that are running it. Like music industry is down to 3 labels, technology is down to like the big 4 scary companies. Like it is all very much, to at least to me, like there's parallels between the two, but what came after the dark ages and that whole period was the Renaissance and all of this like flourishing art that was, you know, really based on human connection and emotion. And I'm really hoping we get back to or get something like that out of this, where I think to your point, people are feeling so starved of that like interpersonal connection and that tactility that like there's a reason why like live events have rebounded well after COVID, and people are going and doing that kind of stuff more. And I think a layer of why I love kind of paying homage to these artists is because I love other artists. Like I have so many friends in New York City that are amazing artists, and I love going to support them, and I love the opportunity to make with like things with them. And you know, if somewhere down the road, like I end up getting to work with a Sabrina Carpenter or Chapel Roan because of this, like
Yeah.
obviously I would have been glad that I did that. And I think
It takes
to your
one person to know one person.
exactly. And I think to your other point, I also love like a good knowing nod. Like I know that you know that I know that I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where the like parody of things comes from. Because another piece of this whole promotional thing is we're going back to the capitalism thing is we're making all these like fake SNL ads for these fake products that are associated
Amazing.
with each song. And so like been going deep down in SNL rabbit hole and seeing all the old like the Settle like commercial for the fake dating app. And so we
Yeah.
made one for Love Seeking that was in the same style. And I just love like I've always been like a reference person. Like people talk about my sense of humor, and it's not like I don't come up with original jokes on the fly, but I'm like I'll reference all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff and
I'll quote a
give,
random line from Community that Ken Jeong says one time, and if you know, you know. Otherwise, you'll never
yeah,
know.
exactly. Like I'm an endless stream of like quotes from Airplane, Monty Python, The Holy Grail,
Yeah.
and Family. That's like it. Um,
Amazing.
like for me though, that's just like another form of artistic expression, and I think like I hope that people see it as like a what you said, like honoring the artist, because I love all of these pieces of art. Like I genuinely love Chapel Roan, and that is my favorite Chapel Roan song,
Yeah.
my favorite video. And like I wanted to make it just with, you know, paying homage to it, but putting it through my own artistic lens.
Yeah.
And doing the same thing with all these other amazing artists too. And it's yeah, I mean it's been fun to your point to have people be like, wait, I know that, like I've
Yeah.
seen that before. And I'm like, yeah, and it's probably a lot better than what I'm doing, but like we're having fun. So
Right. And you know what? I don't think it's necessarily even a thing of better or worse. I think it's a cool like kind of chain because, you know, specifically in music, you have a lot of people sampling everyone else's work, right? Like right now, um whose song is it that samples Somebody That I Used to Know by Gautier?
wait, I don't know about that, but I need to know.
Hold on. I will literally look this up. But it's one of those like trendy TikTok songs. She's also huge. I don't remember if she performed at the Grammys or at the Video Music Awards, but uh it's the one that says something about that's my anxiety. Dun, 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 whatever.
I've
Um
probably yeah, I'll definitely look it up
yes.
after this.
But basically, you know, you have a lot of people who are sampling very popular songs now, whereas I think before samples used to be kind of like low key, tongue in cheek.
Yep.
Covers have always been a thing, especially, you know, post YouTube. I think what you're doing is really cool with video covers. That's a little bit more rare because you see it with visual art, even, right? Where someone will paint themselves into the Mona Lisa, someone will paint themselves into, you know, the Sistine Chapel. You'll see people kind of cover quote unquote different pieces of work, but I think video covers are pretty rare. Parodies tend to be, you know, humorous, comedic, they use the same melody, they use the same, you know, concept, the same storyline. And I think this is maybe one of, if not the first time I've seen a video cover again tied to an original song, which, you know, I'm always fascinated by a new form of media, and I think this is about as close as it gets to that.
Oh my God, I mean that's really cool that you said that. I think that like I had never even thought about it that way, but you know, yeah, it's been fun to do. Like I said, just for all the reasons of honoring those artists that I love and putting it through my own lens. And also too, it's you know, I would love to have Chappell Roan level budget to make music videos, but we're doing it out here on a
Right.
shoestring. So, but I think that inherently adds some different elements to it, where like maybe we're restricted on certain items, so we have to get creative with how we do certain things, and how that comes out ends up being maybe better than if we had $1 million to spend on something. And
Yeah.
uh, so I think that's also part of that's kind of the fun of it too, is trying to solve those problems, and ball on a budget.
Well, you do see that succeed in other spaces. You mentioned you like film as well. Blair Witch Project is an example of a really famous, super successful piece of work, award-winning piece of work, which was mostly improvised and all filmed like on handheld cameras. So you don't really need a crazy budget. You just need a good story and a good concept, and the rest kind of takes over from there.
That's 100% it. And I think it's a good that's a great example for just like art in general, because I think a lot of people probably do get deterred when they see, I think, social media probably perpetuates it, like all these big artists with these big budgets and all these different things, and like even I sometimes think like, well, I'm never going to be able to like quote unquote compete with that because I don't have
Yeah.
the budget. But one thing I've been trying to get over is like art isn't a competition. Like this isn't
Yeah.
sports, anything like that. Like you like lo-fi music resonates with people, and it was probably made for $1,000 in someone's
Oh yeah.
basement. Or you think back to like grunge music, where like Nirvana made their first album for like pennies. Like,
Yeah.
but it's Nirvana, like it connected with people. And
But see,
we're
Nirvana also started somewhere as well, right? And I think you
yeah,
said it perfectly, in which this is kind of a renaissance in music, right? And so I think that's the best way to look at it. It's not even a competition because you're not the same era. You're the new wave. You're bringing it back to life in your own cool, unique way. And, someone needs to be Michelangelo. Someone needs to be, whoever else. Like, it's that mentality of if someone's going to do it, why not you type vibes, right?
exactly. Well, it's interesting too. So I was looking up your channel before, and I saw your previous episode was about the new Justin Bieber album, and then also AI. And I think that's the main reason to fight back against AI, because it's like, yeah, you've made it easier than ever to create faceless art that like takes no time but has no humanity to it.
Hmm.
And I think the counter to that is like real people making like real art all at the same time, and kind of having this wave that pushes back it. And I think like I love Justin Bieber's album for the fact that like he could have gotten in a studio and made of the moment straightforward pop record, but instead he was like, I'm gonna throw on some McGee and some Dijon and like make this like soulful, like drowned guitar R&B album. And I was
Hmm.
like, yes, please, like give me
Yeah,
more.
and it's
I
good and
love,
it's resonating with the pop audience, and that's if you listen to the last episode, that's kind of like what my whole arc was, that anytime that Justin Bieber decided I'm going rogue and doing my own thing, it was always an R&B album, but you could still feel that it was kind of like choked back because, he still had to sell records and he still had to sell stadiums. And this is the first time that I've listened to something and I'm like, this is a properly like unique sound, but it still works and you can still hear like all of the same influences that showed up in other
mhm.
genres and other singles by him, just in a more kind of free way. And so now, like almost every single song on that album is actively trending on social media, which I fully doubt was ever the intention. Just because they're all so weird and different, and none of them have a good clip. But the internet found a way to make do, and that's I think my favorite part. Obviously, I'm biased. If you've been listening to the show long enough, you know that I have identified out loud as a believer, but that is a great example of it, I think. And specifically with AI, I know a lot of people use AI as an aid in their art, and I've always kind of had mixed feelings because as someone who started off like as a traditional artist with watercolors or with a camcorder or with an actual like acoustic guitar, any sort of art that I've ever found interesting, I've always done it in like the most traditional, authentic way. And now that someone can QWERTY their way through a guitar chord kind of loop on GarageBand, or someone can use ChatGPT to generate like the mock-up for a logo, or even use something like Suno to write a song kind of for them and then kind of use the stems from that to change it and make it their own. I'm still of the mindset of like, you didn't need that though. Other artists have already set down that groundwork. So like similarly to what you've done with these music videos, like that concept already exists. You just have to look for it. You're cutting out the middleman of searching for it, but it's one of those situations where it's kind of corny to say like half of the adventure is the journey, but it is, because that's how you find new things and you learn and you discover. And it's the difference between, like, you're taking the easy way out and just grabbing the answer directly instead of learning how to do it and learning that process. And you're missing out on, even just meeting other people in that space that do that thing. Um, which I think is interesting that that's become the status quo, but I also think it's sad that that's become the status quo, because my favorite part of creating anything is always sharing it, right? Like, even if I'm not doing it to go viral, if it's just like I'm posting it on Facebook for my aunts to see, it's like, look, I made this and I know you like these flowers. Enjoy.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I think people's antennas go up, and they can always tell when something is kind of fabricated. And you know what? There is an audience for it, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that like they just want background music, or they
Yeah.
want something that's like very immediately, whatever the art form is, that's very immediate for them, and they don't really care how it was made. But I think, like, as I've gotten older and I think about what makes life worth living, and what makes showing up every day worthwhile, it's always like that guttural joyous feeling, or that just like gut punch of emotion that only comes from being with other people. Like, I've never felt that like alone doing something. It's
Yeah.
always like because I'm sharing something with someone that's very like human at its core. Um, and so like, yeah, like sure, I could have made this entire EP using AI, and it would have saved me infinite amount of time and infinite
It could
frustration
have
and
cut down 8 months into one, but
literally. But like, it's just like that's for someone else. Like, I'm on this journey, and like I would rather just learn how to do this on my own and fail a bunch, which is how I learn how to do things. And just like be okay with that, rather than kind of cut out the middleman. And that's just my journey on it, and I'm not trying to like rain on anyone else's parade, but I do think like in the long run, if you do choose to do the more organic, tactile way, like you'll feel better about it, you
yeah.
know?
And I agree. I'm of two minds, like I said, because I've seen the wave where like I've fought back against it personally. Like, whenever digital art and digital mixing first even became a thing, it's like, oh, but you don't know how to actually string a guitar. You don't know how to load watercolor. And I was that snarky old head that's like, y'all kids are crazy. And now on this side of things, I'm seeing that generation complain about AI, and I'm like, well, it's kind of the same thing you did to traditional artists, but you know what? It's fine. We'll let that slide. And so now my personal wrestle is, like, the technology itself is really impressive. It is really cool that it can take this and make that. I just hate that it's replacing the people that do this and make that. As one of those people, anyone that works, I think, in any sort of creative industry has kind of felt that fear, like, oh man, like today it's like this, but tomorrow I'll be the one that's, training someone how to teach a robot to be me.
Right.
Which, can and has happened to a lot of people in a lot of ways. I
100.
was saying on last week's podcast, which hasn't released yet, it will release soon, I promise. But I was saying on last week's podcast, like, I was actually one of my first like remote jobs, like towards the end of COVID, was actually working towards cleaning up AI speech, because it was rambling a lot, it was hallucinating a lot, and so I found like a random prompt driven kind of project, and I was like, I need money. Let's see what it's about. This is my first time even opening AI, because I just always ignored ChatGPT and Gemini. I always thought it was goofy and it was always wrong. And so I was like, you know what? Let's see what's actually going on the other side. And I'm like, oh, this is like awful. This doesn't even work half the time. And give it a year, and I've moved on. I'm doing other stuff, and I see GPT 4.0 just launched. Meta just launched an AI chatbot, and I'm like, I wonder my input had any impact on these major types of programs. And then I'm like, man, I accidentally helped further a program that I had no idea would become this huge. And kind of seeing the change in how it was intended to be used when I was working in that space versus how it's actively being used, it's like one of those situations where it's like, oh man, like the butterfly effect is so real, because for
Mm-hmm.
every me that was like, maybe ChatGPT shouldn't call me dumb if I didn't know the answer to something, right? For every me that was doing that, there was someone else saying, yeah, but maybe it should tell, like, teach the person the right answer. And then there was someone else saying, maybe it should just do the thing for you. And so, that just kind of goes to show everything impacts everything.
100%. Yeah. And I think the scariest thing is that it's moving so quickly right now that I don't think anyone's really thinking about like the safeguards and like what happens when it learns how to prompt itself, and
Yeah.
all these different things that we're to your point handling right now, but like in a year, 2 years, 5 years, what's that going to look like? And it's a little scary, obviously. But I think all we can do is hope that people get they have enough of it and they realize that they want something that's a bit more real and fulfilling, and that is probably too much of a hopeful outlook on it.
And again, I don't think it really is, because you do have that audience, which is I think I'm safe to say people like us, and people that we know that are kind of either in the space or fans of the space, where acoustic shows are even becoming a big thing again. I've seen a lot of artists that make like very like synthy pop type of music offer acoustic shows at like a small venue, at a random bar, at a random club, just like buy it quick, but like this is also a thing we're offering. And more people are actually releasing like their voice memos along with their albums, and just like giving us like an insight into the creative process, which I think is cool. It's kind of like leading by example, and a little bit a test of accountability, in which you're showing like I did make this, I did it, here's the proof, here's my thing, which I think is kind of a funny side effect. But as a fan of creatives, I'm like, oh yes, please show me how you made that. That's so exciting.
No, 100%. Speaking of, like, we're playing like a release show in New York, and this time around I was like, let's do something that's like unplugged. Like let's just get on it. Like we're playing on a rooftop with me and an acoustic guitar and a band all playing like unplugged instruments, and we're going to do versions of like some of my more poppy songs with just that. And there's certain songs that like we're playing that like I'm curious how it's going to go, because like there's certain notes I have to hit while playing just an acoustic guitar, and I can't just like belt them out while we're
Right.
playing this stage show. So it's like there's a vulnerability to it that is like nerve-wracking but also exciting, because like you're like, yeah, like I got to do this, and
Yeah.
I gotta show up and put the money where my mouth is with this a little bit. So no, I love that, and I think you're totally right about the acoustic show thing making a big comeback. Like I feel like that's the majority of the shows, honestly, I see my friends doing, and the artists in New York doing are acoustic based now, just as much as they are the big flashy, pop shows and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's
And New York is kind of leading the music world through that kind of charge. Like I'll see something happen in a tiny room in Brooklyn, and then I'm seeing it happen in Nashville and in California and everywhere else.
yeah, no, the scene here is really, like I said, rebounded well from COVID. I remember like soon after things opened, kind of playing my first show here, and it being like kind of weird, and like not a lot of people were still kind of not sure about coming out and doing that. And now like I feel like half of my social events, if not more, are based around going to people's
Yeah.
shows, events.
Same at this point, yeah. So
But it's
to
so
yeah,
cool though.
it is awesome. And to piggyback off of your perfect segue in the topics, I completely missed that one. Tell us about your show, promote yourself. Let us know what we can look forward to from you.
Yeah, so the EP is coming out finally on August 22nd. So we're playing a show the night before at this place called the Rooftop at the Yard. It's in Lower East Side of Manhattan. It's actually a co-working space, but we know the promoter of events there, and this amazing rooftop that has a view of the city. And we're playing a MTV Unplugged style set with a couple of my friends, Jack and Wes. Tickets are completely free. We're actually just going to be raising money for AFSP, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and having some special merch there as well for the show. So a lot of good things to look forward to there. And then from that, there'll be another music video in the fall. That one I'm still concepting, but it's going to be an Ariana Grande parody music.
Ooh, amazing. I feel like you have to find a word that isn't parody for these, because I'm
I
not
know you're
lying. They're amazing. Like they're actually such good like film studies. I don't know how else to put it. Like it's
Oh
great.
my god.
I'm such a fan. Maybe your girl makes a trip up in August. We'll see.
Ooh, good. Definitely say
Dude, I'm in. You've sold me on all of this. And you know
love it.
what? Just I forgot to mention something. But this is exactly what the whole point is of doing things personally instead of taking the AI shortcut, right? Like for example, you in your writing process, you got to actually, you said earlier, you got to write and work with your bandmates instead of cutting out the middleman and just typing, I wrote these lyrics, I wrote these vocals, make me something, and then just handing it off to them to learn. And, we're sitting here having this conversation instead of me feeding this write up through, ChatGPT and giving a, like, you know, kind of a, instead of a talk show, this could just be a presentation. And
Mm.
I feel like this is the format that I'm happy with. It seems like that's kind of the format you're happy with. So it's nice to see that there are artists that are up and coming, and you've got a decent following. I will say, I was of course doing my research, and I was like, okay, I see it. And with this conversation, I think it's clear to see why, and I think that's
Uh,
really cool.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I just love conversation. Like I can talk. That's why I wrote a song called "Stop" to tell myself to stop. No, I mean, like this is the kind of stuff I could do this all day, and I love having conversations with other creatives and people that are just passionate in general. Because I've found that there's so much that alluring out of life, but really at the end of the day, like the best parts are about being passionate and sharing those passions with other people. And that's what it kind of boils down to for me. So I really appreciate you taking the time and having me on today. This has been amazing.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Thanks for talking with us. Super excited to see what's next. I truly think that this interview speaks for itself in who you are and what you care about. The music, of course, if you heard the intro song, you already know what this is about. If you missed the intro song, don't worry, we'll have a closer. I think we'll probably sign off with Love Seeking, which is the other song that you mentioned, which I'm super super excited to present because, like I said, that was the one that I watched the music video and I'm like, wait a second, this feels so familiar. So I'm hoping that you, as the audience, will have that chance too. For the final question, I guess that's a good note to end on. Like, tell us about the inspiration behind Love Seeking, and kind of how you grab your inspo for things like that.
Yeah. So Love Seeking was the first song I wrote for this EP. I was in the middle of promoting my album that came out last year and was kind of just searching in general in life. It was based around looking for, romantic love, but also searching for purpose and place and all those things. And um,
Fulfillment.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what Love Seeking is all about. It's through the lens of romantic, but it's that kind of mantra of like, no, you can seek out magic in life. It doesn't just
Yeah.
have to be the status quo. And the EP kind of grew from there, asking that question about, is there really such a thing as fulfillment in life? And I think, um, you know, I think the answer is yes. But at the end of the day, that's what life is all about: is seeking fulfillment, seeking love, and seeking joy, and all these connection, and all these kind of lofty concepts. Because like, what's the point otherwise, right? So,
Right.
so that's where Love Scene came from, and yeah, it was the perfect way to kind of open up this new EP in terms of release as a single, and everything kind of came from there.
That's awesome. That's actually super, super cool. I can't wait to listen back to everything with a new mind after this conversation. And of course, the EP comes out in, by the time you're listening to, less than a month, exactly a month from the point of recording, which I think is such a cool little coincidence. But as our time here draws to close, once again, thank you so much for having this conversation. You've been listening to Podcast with a K, and I'm your host, Carla with a K, signing off for WECS 90.1 FM, Twitch, or wherever you get your podcasts. We will sign off, like I said, with Love Seeking. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will see you next week at the same time with new nonsense and new guests.